All right, so welcome to the African Social Entrepreneurs Podcast. And today's episode is simply about the title of our podcast, which is What is Social Entrepreneurship? Social entrepreneurship is a business that is focused towards improving the standard of living of a community or environment. So it is more about doing business for a social cause, not just necessarily focusing on profits like how your normal enterprises do. But at the end of the day, uh, we've came to realize that non-profit organizations don't really sustain themselves for quite a long time because of lack of funding. Hence the birth of social enterprises. And why did we decide to title this podcast the African Social Entrepreneurs Podcast? Well, mainly it's because looking at the global economics, Africa is actually behind economically, and its number one problem is poverty, which stems for a huge opportunity for creative problem solving. And this is where social entrepreneurship comes in, because when it comes to social entrepreneurship, you try and find the best possible and yet efficient way to solve a particular problem within an environment or a community. So that's why we decided to choose Africa, because of course this is where this podcast is based, but also because Africa is one huge project waiting to be implemented, or rather, the future of Africa, the future successful, bright state of Africa is one project that is yet being waiting to be implemented. And we want to be part of the journey as a podcast, and also at the same time share different ideas with our listeners, with our viewers, and just try and see what is the best possible way we can tackle this whole problem together. So, this is what this podcast is all about. And I really appreciate you for listening to us and watching us. And so let's look at another topic. All right. So the next topic is social enterprises versus non-profit organizations. All right. So in the past, we didn't really have social enterprises. I think they've been in existence for maybe around 20 years or so, or maybe even less than 20 years. But non-profit organizations have been there for over a long period of time. But now the disadvantage with them organizations is that, of course, they don't profit, which tends to be a disadvantage for them, because at the end of the day, any organization needs some sort of money to sustain it. And non-profit organizations depend on corporate funding, government funding, and sometimes they are not successful in securing some funding, which often leads them to failing. Whereas with social enterprises, profit is not the main goal, but at the end of the day, since it's an organization that is also driven towards having to make money so that it could continuously sustain itself without the need to depend on uncertain possibilities of funding from third parties. So this really plays a huge role in what social enterprises can do for any community. So, like I said about the show, we're all about discussing different ideas and seeing how we can possibly play a huge role in impacting or accelerating Africa's socio-economic development. And because of ideas, we thought maybe let's actually take a little case study. So we know that Africa has quite a few number of villages here and there, actually quite a lot. And most of the problems that are still faced in villages are lack of sanitation, no transport, bad education and healthcare. And for example, if we take one case study, let's take water. So let's say there's a village that doesn't have access to clean water. And how can a social enterprise deal with this? So social enterprises, if not partnering with corporates or government agencies, they can actually, for example, start a small company which provides water to the villagers but charges them very, very small amounts of money. Why very, very small amounts of money? Well, simply because most possibly the people in the villages are low income earners, and because of that, they can get that amount of water at quite a low price, but still get the satisfaction of drinking clean water. And that's how a social enterprise works. But of course, it's not that they operate at a loss, because there's a thing called the business model. So a business model is simply a strategy on how you could balance out your expenses versus your costs, I mean your spendings as a company, and how you're going to market your product. So it basically helps you keep your business floating during the start and of course throughout the course of its business journey. And really that's what it's all about. Yeah, so this was really just a short podcast for our first episode, just to give out a little introduction on what social entrepreneurship is all about. But as we move on to other episodes, we'll start having guests on the show. We'll start having case studies, discussing the state of social entrepreneurship in Africa, and sometimes even sharing a few um, documentary films which would have been courtesy of our research as a podcast. So we're really hoping that you're gonna join us in this journey as we try and invent the future of Africa one idea at a time, and of course accelerating its development. So thank you very much, and we'll see you in the next episode.